Sports brought to you by Blue Ridge Community College. Mike Schikman Show, 4:15 on WSVA. Very, very pleased to have as a first-time guest, Mr. Douglas Box. This is a fascinating story. Almost three-quarters of family businesses do not have a succession plan. New York Times reports only 30% of family-owned businesses make it through a second generation. Why? Well, business founders who don't clearly specify who will take over when they pass. We have a gentleman who is joining us right now to talk just about that. His name is Doug Box because he lived through it. And his Box Family Advisors specializes in assisting family-owned businesses to create this succession plan. Douglas Box, welcome to the Mike Schikman Show. It's great to have you.
Mike, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Well, I have to tell you, this is something I think for a lot of us who've been around for a while, one of the tragedies is that a business we've grown to love in our lifetimes. The owner dies, and we hear the kids are going to take over, and boy, it just doesn't work out.
Yeah, and it's really sad when that happens. I mean, I think everybody out there listening probably knows of a family somewhere that is estranged or cut off from each other somewhat, and it always has to do with money. And so my business proposition is basically trying to help families avoid those many pitfalls, as I like to say, keep the business from destroying the family and keep the family from destroying the business.
Now, for a guy who is known primarily for growing out in the original South Fork Ranch in Dallas. How did you get to VCU, for heaven's sakes?
Well, I just grew up in a family business. My dad was rumored to be the inspiration behind the fictional character J.R. Ewing. And as I say in my book, I don't think he was that because my dad was a lot larger than that. But I grew up in a family business, Mike, and went through the trials and tribulations firsthand. And I want to do everything I can to keep families from falling apart, keep family business enterprises together, working together in as much harmony as possible. And there's just not enough people that know how to do that. But I am one of the rare birds who do try to do that for families.
Now, your new book, Texas Patriarch, is that out yet?
Texas Patriarch, A Legacy Lost, is going to be released on October the 11th of this year, so about 2.5 months. And I'm very excited about it. It took me 4 years to write that book. It's really a cautionary tale for families in business together because we had everything. My dad scaled the American dream. He rose out of poverty with nothing, played professional football, U.S. Marines, CEO of a giant corporation in New York City, dies unexpectedly at the age of 70 without a succession plan. Then his 4 sons grapple with it for the next 4 years, and we eventually are forced to sell it by a federal judge for pennies on the dollar.
That is awful. But
it is awful. It was awful, and I do everything in my power to prevent families from falling into that same conflictual trap. It's a dreadful case. In fact, writing the book was a rather hideous experience for me, but I had to do it. I felt that I owed it to the community of family businesses to serve as a cautionary tale.
Now, we're talking to Doug Box, who has built a business, has written a couple of books, but he's built a business called the Box Family. And it is an opportunity, Box Family Advisors, that is. It is, and I don't know if it would have helped me because I shared some real estate with my brother, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
Well, it's too far away. And, one of us is business-minded, the other isn't, and unfortunately it was not, it was just not a good situation. But we all have a little bit of understanding about that. I mean, every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, we go through the trauma of dealing with family.
Yeah.
And imagine that just blowing up 100 times or more when all of a sudden, instead of obeying orders for, and you were the youngest in the family.
Correct.
So nobody paid attention to you.
Oh, no. Poor, pitiful me, right?
No, but the thing is everybody thinks they're the smartest guy in the room, except for the one guy who is the smartest guy in the room, and he doesn't think he is.
I like that.
That's usually what happens. But the point I'm trying to make is, unless you do have a succession plan, there's really not much to do, is there, to salvage a business?
That's absolutely right, Mike. You've got to have a written succession plan. It may not be the perfect plan, but it's kind of like going into a game or anything else. Having a plan is better than no plan at all. And you'd be amazed at the proportion. You mentioned the statistic at the beginning, but you'd be amazed at the proportion of family-owned companies that don't have anything written down, no written succession plan. It's like 95%. And vast majority of the family's wealth is contained in that business enterprise, and yet they have no succession, no transition, no continuity plan for the future. And so little wonder why 2 out of 3 of every first-generation family-owned businesses will fail. From generation 2 to generation 3, the stats are even worse, like 80 to 90% of them will fail. And so my value proposition is I try to beat those odds. I try to up the probability that a family will be able to pass on their wealth to the next generation. And I must say, in all modesty, every family that I've worked with, I'm not saying that I deserve all the credit for it, but every family enterprise that I've ever worked for still has their business. They're still making money. They're still working together. They may not be kumbaya, every day is heavenly paradise, but they are working together. They're making money. Their businesses are growing, and it really does require the use of outside advisors, third-party people who come in who are objective and can give you sort of an outsider's opinion as to what you ought to do for a plan.
Now, we all know the mega big businesses. I mean, to be honest, Walmart hasn't been worth a damn since Sam Walton died. But, as far as just being a place you really enjoy shopping. Because when Sam was alive, if there were more than 2 people waiting online, they opened another register. Where's the last time you saw that at a Walmart? But this is a big farm area and family farm area. And so there are a lot of people who are listening to us now who may not think they need to put that plan together because, of course, we're all going to live forever. But we really, that's something that really has to be done. And those are the kinds of discussions. You always talk about parents having discussions with their children and vice versa about matters of life and death and things like what you're going to do, in the hospital and whatever, all the advanced directives. But with a family business, it has to be done even sooner than that.
Oh, yes.
How early?
And I have a lot of sympathy for the families that are out there, be they farm families or manufacturing or whatever service industry they're in, because I'm not saying this stuff is easy. I'm saying this stuff needs to be done, so I'm saying do it, do have a plan, be proactive, but my main point here is don't do it alone because you won't do it. And it's not just them. None of us like looking at our will. None of us want to, think about, our death or, life insurance. These are arcane topics, and it's not a fun, interesting process to contemplate your own demise and what's going to happen when I go away. So that's where you really need an outsider. You really need someone who's objective, professional to come in and coach you through, not necessarily make decisions for you, but help the family come to a consensus on what it wants to do, be a thought partner, be a neutral outside advisor. And, it's like one client said, that said, Doug, the main benefit you bring to the table is you make us meet. You make us meet. You make us get together and ask the hard questions that we don't want to ask. So that is really one of the key messages I would have for folks out there who are thinking about this. Don't think it can't happen to you. It can.
Well, and it most likely will unless you do something about it.
Exactly.
Doug, where can people find out more?
Well, you can always go to my website, www.boxfamilyadvisors.com. And I'm all over the internet, but my website's pretty good. And it tells you basically what I do, which is essentially succession planning, family business governance, dispute resolution, and family meetings. I think it's very important for families to have planned family retreats or meetings where they get together as a family. That usually works best if they have an outside facilitator who can come and ask the questions that maybe no one else wants to ask, and have that be a formal process that you do that maybe not every year, but maybe every couple of years. You get together, you go to the beach, you go to the mountains, hide out, get away from the work desk, and get outside the box, no pun intended, and think about what we need to do for the future.
Doug,
so many family business owners are so busy working in the business, they don't have time to work on the business. And that's what I help them work on the business.
Doug, I appreciate you joining us. Good luck with Box Family Advisors, and I hope we help somebody today.
Thank you, Mike. It's been great, and happy to come back anytime.
Douglas D. Box Family Advisors, joining us today on WSBA. Speaking of business and the such, let's update you.